This is a special presentation of Farm Journal Television.
I'm Clinton Griffiths and welcome to Corn College TV. Today, we're mixing it up with tips on crop rotation. Then later, head to the field as Corn College TV takes on the combine. Learn where to look for lost yields at harvest time and collecting quality information from the cab. We're calibrating yield monitors and showing you how to use that information for next year. That's coming up on Corn College TV.
Welcome to Corn College TV with field agronomist Ken Ferrie, associate field agronomist Missy Bauer, Farm Journal's Margie Fisher, and host Clinton Griffiths.
Hello and thanks for tuning in to Corn College TV. We've been talking all season about the systems approach to farming, breaking down those major pieces of every operation into smaller, more manageable bites. Today, we're actually stepping away from the hands-on activities and more into management of the land. That means crop rotation. I recently caught up with Missy Bauer to talk about the keys to rotating crops for system success. Missy, if we look at the end of 2010, markets were all over the place, prices were way up. That may tempt some farmers to change their crop rotations, but you say you really got to think hard when you're doing that.
Yes, we want to think about the agronomics as well as the marketing side. So although the market might want us to do one thing, what are we actually capable of doing in our operation and doing a good job of? Okay, we don't want to pull and all of a sudden try to grow a crop maybe that we haven't grown in a long time or don't have the expertise to grow. So we really want to think about the agronomics as well as that money or the markets and kind of bring the two together. What can we do good in the field and where can we make the most money?
Well, when you're looking at corn on soybeans, corn on wheat, there's risks associated with each of those different rotations.
Yes, we want to think about what are the risks of these different crop rotations. For example, if all of a sudden I'm going to decide I'm going to do maybe some soybeans following soybeans, what do I have as far as issues with sudden death syndrome or soybean cyst nematodes and some of the things that really are beneficial to have a different crop broke up in there. So think about the fields that you're going to actually put those crops in and what the risk may be associated with that. So for example, wheat doesn't like wet feet, so maybe we don't want to put wheat on a farm that we do know is wet. So even though the market's kind of saying I should plant more wheat.
Right. As far as planting, there's some tillage and some things that have to be done, field prep. Each of these crops need a different set of rules, I guess.
That's right, and we want to think even from a tillage perspective as far as, am I corn on corn versus corn on beans? We're going to have a way different approach. In this corn on corn, we've got to think about doing some aggressive tillage, ripping up those old root balls, burying some residue. Well, maybe I've got highly erodible land that I can't do that aggressive tillage on. Well, maybe those fields need to stay in more of a corn-bean rotation where we don't got to be so aggressive.
Right.
So this tillage does play a big role in thinking about our crop rotation and how we manage the residue from the different rotations.
Yeah, it probably also matters what hybrids or what varieties you're going to be planting in these fields.
Yes, we want to think about hybrid selection. If I'm going to go and do corn on corn, that's going to be a lot different hybrid than if I'm just in this corn-bean rotation. So really understanding not only the genetics and the traits, but what's going to do well in these different situations. So you want to get with your seed expert or the breeders, et cetera, the people that know a lot about where the placement makes the most sense and really make sure we get them placed. I mean, we could see huge yield swings just by hybrid selection. So that's going to be key in understanding these rotations.
Right. Bottom line, what do you think makes your decision every year?
Well, bottom line, I think what makes the decision is, knowing what we can do well as far as, making sure that we can agronomically grow that crop in combination with the market side of it. So I really think it has to be both. It can't be all one or on the other or the other.
You got to make sure you have enough equipment, enough people, enough power to go out there and grow these other crops.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to say, okay, maybe the market's driving me to do corn on corn, but I struggle today to get my corn planted in that 7-day window of good field days, then how can I think about adding another 500 acres of corn unless I re-equip? So the equipment really has to play a big role into this as well. What can I get done in a timely fashion as far as planting, as well as harvesting, side dressing, all these things that play into it. But those are some things we got to think about to have this successful crop rotation.
When Corn College TV continues, we're taking on harvest. Make sure your combine is set for maximum yield, plus the real reason to plant a hybrid plot. And it's not because your seed dealer is asking. That's next on Corn College TV.
Corn College TV is brought to you by DeKalb. For all-season strong performance and results you can take to the bin. Go with DeKalb.
Go with the brand that gets results with strong roots and strong stocks for performance you can take to the bin. Go with industry-leading DeKalb genetics and proven Genuity trait technology, letting you get more from every acre. Go all season strong. Go with DeKalb.
Get your crops off to a great start. Use Season Pass with Avail, your ticket to higher yields. Season Pass, a low-salt starter, is non-corrosive, includes zinc, low application rates, available NPK row starter, and includes Avail technology. With as little as 3 to 5 gallons per acre, Season Pass can be applied in furrow, saving precious planting time while maximizing your yields. To get your growing season off to a great start, contact Darren Blank at 812-455-4911.
When you're missing nitrogen, you're missing a lot. On average, more than 30% of soil-applied nitrogen simply disappears. Yet study after study shows that Agritane nitrogen stabilizers yield more. In 2008, 15 to 25 bushels per acre more in corn alone for just pennies per pound. Control nitrogen loss now with Agritane and get back what you're missing. Ask your retailer about Agritane or Agritane Plus.
Hello folks, this is Mark Gold with Top Third Ag Marketing. If you need help marketing your grains or livestock, give us a call. We offer one-on-one relationships that can protect you without the threat of margin calls. We don't speculate, we manage risk. If you're tired of paying acreage and management fees for marketing advice that hasn't actually helped your bottom line, then give us a call.
Call today to get 2 weeks of Mark's private grain marketing email. Top Third Ag Marketing, earning the trust of American farmers every day.
If everything goes well, there's nothing more exciting than hitting the fields for harvest. But to be realistic, that's where the money is. But are you sure you're harvesting every bushel you grew? In today's Head to the Field, Missy Bauer has a few tips on combine upkeep.
So one of the questions we get is how much loss do I actually have in the field when I'm combining? So if we want to have a quick way of checking the loss in the field, we're going to go out with a square foot. So here we have a square foot made up, and we're going to toss this out in the field into different spots. We get it down there, we're actually going to count the number of kernels we see on the ground here. So you got to kind of pick some of the residue out of there carefully to try to be able to see how many kernels are actually on the ground. Every 2 kernels within a square foot's equal to a bushel. So count up how many kernels you have and divide that by 2 will be how many bushels per acre that you are losing in your combining process just from the actual kernels themselves. You're going to want to do this in about 10 different areas of the field to get an overall average of what your loss is. The second part that we want to pay attention to is actually ear loss. So to do that, we actually take a tape and we're going to do a 10 by 10 foot square. So in this case, these are 30-inch rows. We can actually use 5 rows as our width here for the 10-foot wide, and then we'll stretch our tape and do the 10-foot long. And then within this 10 square foot area, we actually want to look and see if we have actually any whole ears that are out here. In this area, it looks like we have one here that had not come through the combine, had fell off at the head. Maybe it was a weak shank or something on there. So if we have one of these in our 10 by 10 foot or 100 square foot area, we're going to have another 1 bushel loss. So if we have a bushel here, and in our example there we have whatever number of kernels, every 2 kernels is going to be a bushel. We're going to add those bushels together, and that's our field loss. What we're doing here today, as you can see, we've headed to the field, and in this Head to the Field segment, we're going to talk about harvest. It's finally here, and what are going to be some things we can look at on the combine and some settings we got to adjust, and dealing with the residue coming out of the back, and of course those wheel tracks that we have to deal with from the grain cart. So the first thing that we're going to look at is trying to determine the header loss. So as you can see, we're going to come in here with the combine, we're going to get to a certain spot, we're going to stop, back up, so we can look at what's the type of damage or loss that I'm having just from where this head is running. So what we want to look at here is be taking a look at how many kernels do I have down on the ground, so I know whether I'm getting a lot of header loss or not. We'll be able to go ahead and look into some of these areas, looking at how many kernels in a square foot that we have, because we'll remember that every 2 kernels in a square foot is going to be equal to 1 bushel. So when we look here into this square foot, we can see that we have several kernels on the ground here. We are going to need to make some adjustments to this head to try to reduce the amount of header loss that we're having here. So adjusting the stripper plates is going to be the first thing that we try to look for. Dial those back in a little tighter to try to eliminate some of this loss that we're seeing here. The other part of the loss that we're concerned about is what's actually coming out of the back of the combine. To check that in the field, what we want to do is be coming along, stop, get out, and actually come into the rows that are adjacent to where we just ran and take a look at the amount of kernels that are being thrown off to the side. We know that this didn't come from the head now, that this is actually what came out of the back of the combine. So we'll go ahead and see what kind of loss we're getting there, and then again we can make the adjustments to the combine to try to reduce the amount that we're losing out of the back end here.
In today's Ask an Agronomist, a viewer asked, "My seed dealer wants me to put in a hybrid plot. How do I make sure I get something out of it?"
I would say there's definitely 2 different hybrid plots. There's the show place hybrid plot that the seed dealer wants out along a road, good access, high fertility, really wants that plot to look good for showmanship. Then there's that plot that the farmer needs, and that's that plot that he needs to tell him how those hybrids are going to respond to his own practices. And I get frustrated sometimes when I walk out into a farmer's plot, but he's got 100 more pounds of nitrogen on that plot than he would put on his own farm. Or maybe he's no-tilling, but in the variety plot he did a lot of tillage. The variety plot on your farm, if you're making decisions, has to be treated the way you're going to manage those hybrids when you take them out of that plot. So the same, not only the same nitrogen rate, but the same timing. So if you're going to put all your nitrogen on at one time in the spring, that's the way the variety plot should be treated as well. The variety plot should be treated with a fungicide if you're going to spray a fungicide on the rest of your acres. If not, it shouldn't be. Sometimes the variety plot ends up being right next to the house where we can't get in and spray a fungicide, and it really doesn't represent how you would manage that hybrid. So I think you have to think about it and say, I'm going to put it in ground that represents a large percentage of my acres, and I'm going to treat it just like I would with my management style out in the field. Then that information is going to be very pertinent coming out of there, and it's going to mean a lot to you when you actually select your hybrids.
Still to come on Corn College TV, measuring what you grow and managing with what you know. We're calibrating yield monitors and deciphering the results into yield maps. Coming up on Corn College TV.
Corn College TV is brought to you by Avail. Avail this fall helps get your crop off to a good start. Next stop to higher yield potential, your crop. Visit www.sfp.com for more information.
It's a painful fact that up to 75 to 95% of your phosphorus never reaches your crop. That's why there's Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer, a proven technology that protects your phosphorus fertilizer from locking into the soil. Treating your fall-applied phosphorus with Avail will give your crop the nutrients they need in the spring, and you the peace of mind knowing your fertilizer will be available to your crop when it needs it. See the difference for yourself. Visit chooseavail.com or give them a call, 888-446-GROW.
It's a good tool to have, and it's very simple. It's real easy when we ride the fence if the limbs fell down to take this kit, which I can just keep it on the saddle.
When you come by a loose wire, you grab this thing out of your tractor and tighten it up. You can tighten it and be back in the tractor about as fast as you can open a gate.
We're simply going to open up one side of the jaw, lock it on, open up the other side, and we're going to turn our body sideways. Now, the tighter I pull it, the tighter the fence stays. We're going to lay it across the face of the tool. We're going to take a nice short wrap on this side, We're going to come over here. We're going to take a nice short wrap on this side like this. So use your fencing pliers and simply weave it right back into the fence where you took it out of. Now if you'll notice, that fence is just nice and bowstring tight, just like we wanted it to be when we started out.
Order the original Texas Fence Fixer today for just $89.95 plus shipping and handling. Or get the kit. Includes fencing pliers, deerskin gloves, the original Texas Fence Fixer and carry bag for only $139.95 plus shipping and handling. Call or order online today.
Rust is destroying your valuable equipment and property. Rust Guy permanently stops rust the easy way. No scraping, grinding, or sandblasting. Brush, spray, or roll Rust Guy onto any rusted metal and it will not rust again. Rust Guy is not a paint, but an industrial strength formula that kills rust on contact. It leaves a smooth finish that can be left as is or painted. Rust Guy protects from salt, manure, fertilizer, urine, and rain. Call 888-RUST-GUY to talk to a rust expert or go to rustguy.com.
Missy, when it comes to harvest, there are some things that we can do to really get good information from our crops. And one of those is calibrating our yield monitor and getting yield maps. Let's start with the yield map. What are we looking at there?
Yeah, when we're trying to know whether or not we have a good yield map, it's actually going to come back to how did I calibrate.
Okay.
So if I calibrate good, I'm going to have a good yield map. If I calibrate poorly, I'm going to have a poor yield map. And what I mean by calibrate good, we're talking about trying to get a map that's going to have well-defined patterns in it. So I'm trying to pick out the highs and lows in this field, not just have an average of the field. I want to know the differences or the spatial variability within the field.
Okay, and that can kind of set up your management zones.
Yes, that's correct. Where if we have a poor yield map, we might be pretty good on average, so we might know the average yield for that field, but the map itself is going to look more like a random blur of colors where everything's just in there together. It's going to exaggerate the highs and underestimate the lows and not give us that differentiation within the actual field itself.
Even though the average may be right. Well, let's take a look at what one of these yield maps looks like, and we can kind of see that blurring of colors through it.
Right, this would be an example of a poorly calibrated yield map. So if this is what your yield map looks like, we need to take another step back and do some work. But you can see that we don't see much pattern in here. There's definitely a blur of colors. Then maybe we can pick out a little thing here that looks like it's showing up, but not very well defined at all. To the scales, on average, this could be accurate.
Right.
And that's what's frustrating about it, okay? That at the end of the day, it says the yield for that field is correct, but it doesn't tell me the yield here versus here very accurately.
Okay, so what does a good one look like?
If we take a look at a good one, this second map here is actually the same field, just a different year where the grower took the time to calibrate properly.
Okay.
And now we can start to see that patterns are picked out in here, where we can see we've definitely got some poor yielding areas, we've got some areas that are yielding pretty good, and then we got some of the yellow in here that's kind of that in-between yield. Okay, but we notice that way more patterns and differences spatially in this type of a map versus that previous one that we've seen.
Okay, now can you use this with other tools that might be in your toolbox?
Yeah, that's right. If we take a look at the next map, what we're going to look at is with soil types. So whenever you look at your yield map, if you lay your soil types or your management zones over it, we should be able to see patterns within that. And if we look at this yield map, again, this is a poorly calibrated yield map, a poor yield map here. Here we got our different soil types and zones that are split out here, but we don't see much of a pattern.
Right.
Again,
yeah, it's just spots everywhere.
That's right, that random kind of blur of colors that we call it.
Sure.
Or if we take a look at the next year for this map, when it was actually calibrated properly, again, our soil types are laid over here, but now things are really jumping out at us. Okay. We can see here that we got a little bit lower yield, being the red color. Here we've got pretty good yielding up here in this soil type.
Okay.
So now we start to see this pattern. So if you look at your yield maps and you can say, can I see patterns to them? Or when I lay my soil types over it, can I see how it responds to soil type? Okay. Then that's how we know that we have a good yield map.
Okay, but it all goes back to having good calibrated equipment.
That's right. And what we mean by calibration is we are trying to calibrate it based on flows. So if we take a look at this next kind of chart that we actually put together, we're trying to teach that monitor what low yield is, medium yields, and high yields are.
Okay.
So we've got to kind of trick it, if you want to call it that, in the field to understand how much flow is going through that combine or how many bushels per hour.
Okay.
So if we want to teach it low flow, which would mean low yield, we're going to drive slower.
Okay.
So we are actually going to change this by changing speeds.
Okay.
And depending on what monitor you have, some monitors are going to require we do 2, a low flow, and a high flow, so we'll drive slow and then we'll drive faster. Other monitors may take 5 loads, where we split up the different speeds like we have in this example to get that range of flows. So that's what we're after, trying to teach that monitor low, medium, high, what's out there. If we don't teach it, it's not going to know.
All right, and I think Ken Ferrie's coming up next with a little more detail on calibrating those monitors. Thank you, Missy.
Thank you.
Corn College TV is brought to you by the Andersons, producers of Season Pass with a Veil, your in-furrow corn starter. Season Pass with a Veil, your ticket to higher yields.
Go with the brand that gets results, with strong roots and strong stocks for performance you can take to the bin. Go with industry-leading DeKalb genetics and proven Genuity trait technology, letting you get more from every acre. Go all season strong. Go with DeKalb.
Mark your calendar. Ag Connect Expo 2011 is coming to Atlanta, Georgia on January 7th through the 10th. Connect with experts.
Learn new ideas, new technology.
Connect to the future of agriculture, the newest innovations. Connect globally with producers from around the world.
This show sets itself apart from the regional shows.
Ag Connect Expo 2011, where the world of agriculture comes together.
I've traveled around the world a lot. I've witnessed what we're trying to address here, and that's hunger. There's 6 billion people on the face of the planet today, and they say there's over 1 billion of them that have poor nutrition. They go to bed hungry. And I come back home and I witness the incredible productivity that takes place in American agriculture across our country. Somehow we need to do a better job of getting the food to those people that are in need. I guess when I look at Farmers Feeding the World, I say to myself, what do we really hope to accomplish? I hope we accomplish the design of a system that has a legacy that goes on for multiple generations. And I think with the knowledge that is possessed within agriculture, the funding that is within agriculture, we can get this accomplished.
Farmers Feeding the World is about agriculture coming together to increase both hunger solutions and food production. Learn more, give generously, dream huge.
Ken, one of the most valuable tools for a farmer is a yield map, but not just any yield map, correct?
That's a big tin for as far as when we look at yield maps that are calibrated versus those that aren't. Unfortunately, we see an awful lot of yield maps that aren't calibrated, and they really don't mean much except for maybe inventory control. A good spatial map that comes from a calibrated combine is just unbeatable. What you can do with it is just amazing from a management standpoint.
And what are the keys to getting a calibrated yield map?
The keys start with picking the right spot. So we can come out to a field as we are here today and find a distance or an area in the map with a lot of consistency. This year, for instance, farmers are talking about 100 bushel swings as they go through the field. We can't have 100 bushel swings in our calibration area. We have to find a part of the field that's very consistent, even if we have to cut a headland in the middle of the field, and that's where we're going to calibrate our combine at.
When farmers head to the field, what kind of time invested, or what are the other key steps?
No doubt it takes some time to calibrate a combine, so that's probably where we run into resistance. They just don't have time and don't want to do it, but it's something they got to do. They can make some passes through the field, find the consistent area, and then we're going to set up and start to train that combine monitor as far as the flow goes. So that's going to take a series of loads at different speeds to get the different variabilities in the flow. And doing those slow speeds, maybe a mile, mile and a half an hour, that's pretty painstaking as far as to get the grower to do that. But you got to have it if you want variability or spatial variability in that map.
How can a farmer know that his yield map is from a calibrated yield monitor?
Well, you'll know when you look at the yield map itself, because it'll have a tremendous amount of definition to it versus something that's got all kinds of variations in the color and the flow to it. There's techniques as well that they can look at as far as their speed versus their flow. And there should be a direct correlation. As they pick the speed up, the flow should follow as far as their bushels per hour. And they should see a lot of consistency in that flow in the combine itself. So if they're watching their bushels per hour, they should see it step up as they step the speed up.
And with a good, high-quality yield map, what kind of decisions could a farmer make from that information?
It's going to be crucial to use those maps, I think, when we're starting to talk about variable rate population, variable rate nitrogen. Here in Illinois this year, we've got a tremendous amount of water damage, which cause nitrogen deficiencies, things like that. And it's going to do a lot to help us identify zones within the field. And it may be drainage, but that drainage brings along a lot of things, such as nitrogen management. So it's going to be a foundation piece for VRT.
Thanks, guys. Good stuff. And as we heard, it's an important part of being able to use that information later. And how about this information? If you'd like to see or hear any of the tips from today's episode, remember, it's available 24/7 on our website. Thanks for watching. Class dismissed. Next time on Corn College TV, we're putting it all together and preparing for next year. Join us as we discuss post-harvest field work. Make sure the tools you're using are doing the job. Plus, getting the most out of lime. Learn what makes a quality source and get the do's and don'ts for spreading. That's next time on Corn College TV.
Corn College TV is produced and distributed by Farm Journal Television.